Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media. I'm your host, Tyler Bennett, here with you once again on what I believe is, I could be wrong, on what is the internet's only U Sports and CCAA men's and women's basketball specific podcast. I could be wrong, but I do believe this is the only one. I'll take that as it is. Before we get into this episode, which is apparently episode 23, the one you would have heard on Monday, or hopefully heard on Monday, that featured Nipissing forward Tajon Graham, I said was episode 21. It was 22. This is 23. If it is, it is. If it isn't, who knows? 2020 is off the rails. The first 8 months have flown by. Who knows what number this is anymore? I lost count, lost track. Clearly, I'm losing track of time. I need to shave. Like, looking at myself as I record this, let myself go. It's a struggle. It is what it is. Before we jump in to the episode, I put out a question on Instagram on Wednesday night asking for people to recommend or suggest some basketball podcasts that they listen to that others should listen to as well. And the response early on was fantastic. There were quite a few that I hadn't heard of before that I'm going to add to my list to listen to. A couple you would have heard about on our podcast on Four Quarters, the Drive and Kick podcast, which is co-hosted by Michael Clemens and Dan Libert. You heard from Michael Clemens on the July 13th episode of the Four Quarters podcast, and we're going to hear from Dan Libert a week from when this one comes out, September 10th. He will be on episode 25. Again, if counts right, who knows at this point. So Dan Libert will be on the show September 10th. There's the Double Double podcast, which is co-hosted by Jordan Britton and Alex Cleish, two of the four hosts of that podcast. Both gentlemen play for the St. Mary's Lightning. And then the list kind of just went from there for me. There's Hoop Commitment by Mike Nilsson. You've got the Knuckleheads podcast hosted by Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles, who I just found out they recorded one with Hakeem Olajuwon. I'm excited for that one. They're so entertaining. They're so funny hearing stories from the NBA. I recommend you listen to Steve Nash's episode from a while back. One of the best podcast episodes I've ever listened to. And he's Canadian, so it's a win-win all around. You've got Daniel's Den, hosted by Daniel Passley, a St. FX alum. You've got the Chat Room podcast. You've got Old Man and the Three, co-hosted by JJ Redick. There are so many basketball podcasts out there that I didn't even know about. So I'm adding those to my list. I recommend maybe you do as well. We'll link all of those ones we just listed in the description of this podcast. And then as more results come in through our Instagram questionnaire, we'll link those down there as well, because you can never have too many basketball podcasts to listen to. Why not? Why not add more to the mix? But still, just going through that list, I think Four Quarters podcast is the only U Sports and CCAA men's and women's basketball specific podcast out there. There are some others that have dabbled in U Sports men's or U Sports overall, not just basketball, but very rarely do you see the CCAA garner any attention, let alone the women's side. We'll take it. We're going to run with it as far as we can. episode 23 asterisk, who knows what number it is anymore, is with NAIT Ooks forward Keilan Dobish. He rejoins the show. He made his first appearance on the podcast back in June on the 22nd. That time we looked at his career and what has led him to this point in his career, his high school basketball career, choosing basketball over other sports, playing 4 years at NAIT, going into his 5th year. This time we kind of switched gears a little bit. We looked at what's going on in the world. We had a tough conversation as well around the racial injustices that are going on in America and around the world. So we kicked off the show with a conversation on that. And then we shifted gears into a look at this year's NAIT team as a whole. Keilan went down his own path and gave us updates on pretty much every single player on the roster that's coming back, not coming back, who's coming in. He broke news on some big transfers that are coming in as well that are going to bolster the roster. One that I didn't know had this many changes to it. So really start to finish, this was a fantastic chat. And like I said, shifted gears from his personal story on the first episode, which you can also listen to in the description of this podcast, but switched gears to NAIT as a whole and how Slav has built that program. And we touched on as well the importance of recruiting locally, and hindsight's always 2020, but the Ooks have the bulk of their roster from in and around the Edmonton area. Given the global pandemic, they've been able to be together more often outdoors than they would have been if they pulled players from all across Canada. So hindsight's 2020, but looking ahead now, you may see some coaches put more of an emphasis on recruiting a few more local players. One, to have everybody around in closer proximity in the summer months. And then, heaven forbid, we have a second global pandemic in our lifetime. Please don't. We can't handle another one right now. But heaven forbid one does come up. This had its benefits. Everybody was able to get together much quicker. Yes, it was outside, but it paid off. So we had a good discussion on what's going on in the world and basketball as well, because that's what we said last week on Monday as well. We want to use this platform to give the athletes a voice and keep the conversation going on the racial injustice, the fight for equality that has gone on for centuries too long. It's how we're going to change is having conversations. So we start with that, end with basketball, and there's some other stuff thrown in there as we go. But without further ado, let's jump right into what we assume is episode 23 in season 2 of the Four Quarters podcast, powered by Four Quarters Media, featuring NAIT Ooks forward Keilan Dobish. Enjoy. All right, I'm now thrilled to be joined once again by NAIT forward Keilan Dobish. Keilan, I want to thank you for taking time to do this for a second time in, I want to say, the last 2 months. How are things on your end since we last did this back in June, I think it was?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on again. It was a phenomenal experience the first time, getting to share my story and kind of how my life has evolved with the game of basketball. And, now we're starting to get ready for the start of the season here. Just been doing a lot of training. Again, the last couple months, like I mentioned last time, still working pretty heavily and, just getting ready to get going here. I know it's really close to that time here where everybody's going to start going that is allowed to start going. I know our team, we're all on the edge of our seats just to get going here. We all just want to get back in the gym and start playing. So morale is really high right now with the NAIT Ooks.
Yeah, we were talking before we came on, and you guys are getting set to get back in the gym sometime soon. Out East has been in the gym for a while. out west has been in the gym for a while in BC. Quebec, we're recording this on August 31st, and Quebec announced today that they're resuming sports in September, so football, basketball, whatever. And then there's us here in Ontario. We're just kind of hanging out for fun, just waiting for, I don't know if we're waiting for one of the schools in the gyms to mess up or have an outbreak or what. I don't know. But we're just kind of chilling right now. Just
Yeah.
nobody can get in the gym. It's far different than what anybody else is doing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I was talking to, forget who it was I was talking to, somebody from the team a couple of months ago, and I said, I'm like, I can't remember the last time since before I started playing basketball when I was 8 years old that I went this long without playing inside. Like, it's just a given. It's just something that you think like, oh yeah, I'm just going to play basketball. And then thinking about it, like, wow, I haven't played basketball inside in 4 months. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. It's weird to think that, like, when this comes out, it'll be September and everything closed down March 13th. We have been 5 months since COVID hit, and it feels like it's been the longest 5 months. But it also, you also wonder, like, where did April, May, June, July, and August go? And
definitely,
like, you haven't done anything inside sports wise in, like you said, 4 or 5 months. It's weird to think that it's just been, everything's been outside. It's crazy.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, and like I go outside and I play a decent amount in the summertime anyways. Like, it's nice to take advantage of that time. Like, my brother and I go to the park and we play however many times a week. But this year it's just been like like, I got to go find a court outside to play at. Like, I can't just go get in the gym in the middle of the day and get some shots up if I want, or come and work with the team for 2 hours on a Tuesday night. Like, I actually got to go and seek out a place to play some basketball. And I mean, there's outdoor courts all over the place, but everybody is in the same predicament right now, that those courts are so full and so loaded up with players that it's nearly impossible to go to a court and just have a hoop to just shoot on, or just go work on some post moves for half an hour. Like, it's crazy. It's not something I think anybody would have ever anticipated experiencing in their lifetime.
No. And especially just your season just ends. You're like, okay, like, we can go, we've got another month in the school at least. You can use the gym at the school, and within 48 hours, you're nothing. Just waiting for the snow to melt to find an outdoor hoop to play. And like you said, everybody's in the same situation. So all the good courts are going to be just packed with people. And it's just, it's weird. It's so different than what we're used to. And like you said, you couldn't predict this. Like, you couldn't see this coming from a mile away. Like, nobody could write this kind of stuff and have it be believable.
No, not at all.
It's just, that's 2020. I don't know. Like, September better be normal, or nothing bad better happen, because every month has had a different challenge, predicament. We need like 4 months of calm to focus on the serious things that have come up this year, the important things. No more celebrity deaths, no more police brutality, no more innocent Black men and women dying. Like, just let's work towards the change that we want to see in the next 4 months, and not pour more gas on a fire. That's all I'm asking. I know it's a big ask. We need some sort of calmness right now.
It is a big ask, yeah. And I think the biggest thing is just, obviously we all see what's going on in the States right now. We've seen it with George Floyd. We saw it with Breonna Taylor, however long ago those were now, upwards of 3 to 4 months now. We just saw it last week with Jacob Blake, and just seeing like the continuous onslaught and the pile that just keeps on growing of things that are happening in the world that, are bigger than what a lot of people really think that they are. Everybody's thinking about, like, we're not playing basketball, or we're not doing this, we're not doing that, when there are people that are losing their lives that are innocent out there. They're losing their lives for no reasons. There's people that are being shot in front of their kids in their own vehicles. Like, and it just gets to a point where you think like how much is enough before somebody actually does something about it. And it's been incredible to see in the last week or so what's happened with the NBA. You know, players completely refuse to play because of stuff like this that's going on. You know, they wanted to use the NBA restart in the bubble as a platform to address social injustice and racially motivated acts by police officers and by people in positions of power. And you saw last week, you know, the shooting happened in Milwaukee. You saw the Milwaukee Bucks straight up refuse to play. They said, no, we're not playing. Like, we're here for a bigger reason than that. We're here to try to make a bigger statement. And you saw the amount of teams that followed suit, not only from the NBA, but from the MLB teams refused to play. There was people in the NHL that were hoping to refuse to play. You know, you saw there was guys that voiced out their opinions in that meeting that they would be okay not playing the rest of the season just to try to make a statement and make their voices heard about that. And it's just incredible to see people uniting on that front. And, you know, being a Caucasian male, I've never, like, I always knew that the term white privilege existed, but I don't think I really fully comprehended and understood it until all this stuff started to happen. I started seeing some of the posts that were made by people of African American and other minorities and seeing how they really feel about this stuff and starting to realize, wow, like, this really does exist. It really does exist. And it could include me on any given day. And, you know, being able the last 3 months to take some more time to dive into this and research and kind of understand this whole deal here has made me so much more appreciative for the life that I live and what I've been gifted with. And to, you know, playing obviously collegiate basketball, I've played with a number of African Americans, both on a team and as competitors. Having played football, I've played with numerous African Americans before, and I can understand now and see some of the struggles that these individuals go through. And I've kind of made it a goal this year to, you know, kind of get to know some of these people's perspective and point of view a little bit better and kind of understand, you know, what they go through on a daily basis and kind of more understand what I can do to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Right. I had this discussion too with Tejan Graham and Nipissing on Monday's podcast, and I think, like, myself is included as well. Like, we're both white males, and you mentioned the term white privilege, and it's one of those things that I think most white men and women are in a position of, they know the term, but they're so naive to it that they just kind of go about their business. They don't really realize the benefits that they receive throughout their life, whether it's in school, athletics, work, whatever it is. Just casually running down your street like Ahmaud Arbery. Like, if that was one of us, nobody would bat an eye. You're just another man running. But for him, he was hunted down and shot. And it's one of those terms that I think we know is there. We just refuse to really acknowledge it because we think that's what we're used to. And now, like you said, everything is now, it's so magnified in the States, but this happens everywhere. Like, and you'd be naive again to not think it happens in your own backyard, because it does. But this has really put that into perspective for a lot of people, that this isn't okay. And you mentioned too, I don't think we're ever going to fully understand what Black men and women or persons of color go through on a day-to-day basis. But like you said, the fact that we're willing to have those conversations and get to know, like, to listen about their struggles, to see what they're going through so you can help be a part of the solution. That's the biggest thing I think we can do, is just listen, educate, and work. It's going to have to go, I said it again to with Tejan, it's going to have to be side by side work together to meet at that middle, to the equality we want. Because if white men and women try to go ahead and think they know what's going on, or try to say they understand, we're going to go backwards, because there's no way in hell we will ever understand the centuries of struggles and battles that they've had to go through. But if we work with them to educate ourselves by listening to Black men and women or persons of color, that's how we're going to grow together and meet in the middle. If that made any sense. I have no idea.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree with that 100%. You know, looking back at my career, like I said, I think I counted the other day, I think I've played with 14 African Americans in my 4-year career at NAIT. I can count on our roster this year, just off the top of my head, we got at least half a dozen African Americans that are coming into our roster. And especially with like how big of an issue it's being made of, because like you mentioned, it doesn't just happen in the States. It happens everywhere, you know? Like I live pretty close to Edmonton. There's a very, very large population of African Americans in the Edmonton city. And, you know, if I can just get a little bit better every single day in that regard, because I'm sure there's been times in my life that I've discriminated against someone of that color, and I may not have even been intending to do it, but they may have taken it as that. And, you know, that happens. Like, nobody's perfect. I know that I'm not perfect, but I'm just aiming every day to be a little bit better in that regard, to understand a little bit better what people go through. And, you know, this year, whatever happens with us, if there's something that happens where individuals of color on our team decide that they need to make a statement of some sort, I'll stand by them until the sun goes down. Like, that's my family there, and I need to be there for my family, whether it's something that I necessarily agree with needs to be done or not. I'll stand by their side until the sun goes down.
And you make a good point too. I think, like you said, we're not perfect. Nobody's going to make this as perfect as it can be. We're going to all make mistakes along the way. But I think you hit it on the head. As long as you make strides every day to be better and work towards the change that we all need, whether you're Republican, Democratic, whatever, we need this equality in the world. As long as you make those strides every day to be better, if you see racism called out, if I make a mistake, or if you make a mistake, somebody call us out. Like, point out the mistakes, because that's how we're going to learn. And then that way, as we educate ourselves, we can then educate others. Because you mentioned there's 6 or 7 guys in your team that are African American or Black or persons of color. This whole platform, 4 quarters, has been based, a lot of it has come from Black men and Black women who've played all across the country. And we've been around these individuals so often that you can't stay silent, and you can't not be part of change and then want to celebrate the culture or the music or whatever, or play side by side with these players. I think too, we mentioned the boycotts. I think everybody knows that this isn't going to happen overnight. Like, you're not going to boycott a game on a Thursday and you wake up Friday and everything's right in the world. I think that's understood that this is a long game, and there's going to be a lot of these conversations that need to be had. Tough conversations. People are going to get called out for mistakes. But as long as, like you said, we take those small strides every day to get better in whatever aspect it is, we're going the right direction. And it happens everywhere. Like, I know growing up, we had one Black man on our hockey team. That was it. And the stuff that we heard on benches, thinking back to it, how we let that slide, no idea. But so naive to it. And you think, oh, it's part of the game. No, it's not. Looking back to it, actually, we had 2. I correct myself, we had 2. And if I could go back to those years of playing hockey now, 100% that would not fly. But young, naive, didn't think anything of it. And if I could change those 2, 100%, I'd do it again I would change it 12 times out of 10. Just
definitely. I mean, I play, like I said, I've played with a lot of African Americans in my time. I hear it all the time on the court. I hear guys that get called the racial slurs and get stuff barked at them from the crowd and from the opposing bench, even by other people of the same color as them. And it's tough to hear, and it's tough to really fully comprehend and understand what that does to people like that. Because one time or twice, okay, maybe it's not a big deal, but hearing it over and over and over again every single day, it does start. It's like anything; it starts to wear on you after a while. And I do believe that we are, as a whole in the world, taking steps in the right direction. There are still a lot of people out there, unfortunately, that prejudice against minorities, and they feel that white is the only way to be, and it's the only way to be in the world. And it's very unfortunate that a lot of people still see it that way. And part of it is just the upbringing that they come up in. Their ancestors were raised a certain way, and unfortunately, those beliefs and those views are passed down throughout the family, and it just never exits. And it's very unfortunate to see that. But I'm fortunate enough to have grown up in a family and in a household and in a community where I was taught to treat everyone equally, regardless of what their skin color is, what their sexuality is, what their gender is, so on and so on and so on. And I've always tried to see everybody as an equal until they give me a reason not to see them as an equal. And I base that more based off of their personality and their character and their actions, rather than what their skin color is, what their sexuality is, what their gender is, where they're from, yada, yada, yada.
I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle in all of this, is changing those decades and generations of predetermined bias and predetermined stereotypes, and just how people view white people versus black men and women or persons of color. Just changing those predetermined bias opinions and stereotypes that people have had instilled in them for years. That's going to be the biggest hurdle. And I don't think you're not going to change everybody. That's a given. There's some people that are just so stuck in their ways that they aren't going to change. But when those people are people of power, that's where the issue comes in. That's where you can't have that. You just flat out can't have that. And you see it in the States now. It's been magnified for 4 years. And that's weird to say, too, that it's been a 4-year term. Like, God help me. But you can't have people in that position in the most powerful country in the world with such a narrow mindset that essentially white is the only way. And that just it makes me sick.
Same.
I don't know how else to put it. And I don't know. I don't know where to take that.
I don't either. It's crazy. Like, I think back to my childhood, my longest standing friend that I have, I met him when I was 4 years old. He's an African American. He was born and raised in Haiti, and then he moved here when he was 4 years old. And I couldn't picture my life without him in it. Like, and it'd be crazy to think about what it would be like if I was only associated with white people. Like, I would have never met so many of my best friends from playing sports if I was only surrounded by white people. So I think, like you mentioned, it's going to take time. We're not going to change everybody, obviously, but if we can start to open people up a little bit to the idea of it, and then hopefully that's passed on down into the future generations, eventually maybe we will get to a point where hopefully, like Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. Hopefully one day we can achieve that as a society. It won't be in either of our lifetimes, unfortunately, but hopefully one day we can get to that point.
Right. Yeah. With how fast 2020 has gone, this isn't going to happen in our lifetime. Like, at this rate, my life will be like another week, and then it's just going to be done because this year's gone by so quick. But I think, like we said before, as long as we're making strides every single day towards that equality, whether it's having a conversation like the one we're having now, and I just want to say too, you don't have to have these conversations with Black, Indigenous, persons of color to educate. You can have a conversation like we are as two white males discussing stuff we both have learned from other conversations. You don't need to just wait to talk to a minority, a person of color. You can have these conversations and educate yourself, whether it's looking up or just reading online, understanding the years and years of oppression that they've had to endure. There are so many ways that you can educate and learn. But another thing is, don't be afraid to ask how you can help or what you can do to be part of change. And I guarantee you, a lot of it's going to be listen. Because it's one thing to hear somebody, it's another thing to listen. I think listen is where we're going to get the closest understanding because you're so locked in. You're focused on that person, what they're telling you. Hearing, you're just kind of there. Listening is where we're going to do the most, I think. And then that way we can take what we listen to and apply that to our life and then educate someone else as we go. And if you see it, call it out. Just flat out call it out. If you're willing to call out somebody for not wearing a mask properly in public, you can call out racism. 100%. Just
definitely
grow a set, call them out, point blank. That's how we're going to grow. If you're uncomfortable with it, I don't care. Call it out.
Just do it. That's all it is. Just do it.
And don't call it out in a fact where you're attacking them. Say, call them out in the point of like an education point. Say, this is what you said. This is what you should have said. This is why it isn't okay. Because if you point them out and say, if you go right to you're racist and just go 0 to 10 real quick, then the problem is going to be that much bigger. Just do it in a way that, one, minimizes your confrontation, and two, helps this other person grow and improve on how they go about their life from here on out. Because they may just not know what the right term is to say. Because I used this example on Monday too. Stan Van Gundy was on Twitter talking about percentages. And he used the term blacks with an S at the end, which he got called out for on Twitter, which is, one, that's a tough place. Like, you can get ripped apart real quick. But the way they brought it up was educational, and he said, I didn't know that was a derogatory way to phrase things. I learn and do better next time. Simple conversation. That's all you need to have. And now he's learned. Anybody else who's seen that tweet has learned. And now there's hundreds, if not more, people who are better off because somebody wasn't confrontational and said, this is what you should have said instead of this, and this is why. Don't go in looking for a fight because you're going to get one. Go in to teach. Everybody's going to be better for it.
Definitely. 100%.
And like we've said before, we're all going to make mistakes. I'm going to make a mistake. I will full on admit it now. I'm not perfect. I will do my best. If I've made a mistake in this and somebody listens to it after, please point it out. Please call me out for it so I can do better next time. That's all I ask.
I'm with you on that. Everybody's got to be held accountable. Might be tough, but everybody has to be held accountable, and that's the only way that you're going to learn and improve.
Yep. And luckily, knock on wood, so far, this is the 79th one of these I've done. Nobody has called me out for anything yet. So that is a good sign. or maybe nobody listens, and then I don't have to worry about it. So either way, I haven't been called out yet. So Twitter has been a safe haven so far since January. So we'll see what happens.
Either way, that's a pretty darn good shooting percentage.
And I think I just ruined it too. It's one of those things you don't talk about a shutout until the game's over.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that might end soon. I think
you're gonna open up your phone once we're done recording here, and someone's gonna be pissed at you.
So hopefully it's not my wife. For I don't know what I could have done, but as long as it's not that, I think I'm going to survive.
As long as it's not her this time, you mean?
Yeah, there have been some moments, but I might ruin this again too. In the 9 years we've been together, I have not slept on the couch once.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a round of applause for myself.
You're doing really good.
I just ruined it though, I think too, because now she doesn't listen to these, so thank goodness. But I think if she did and she heard that, she would make me sleep on the couch just
for the sake of saying it.
Just to, one, ruin the streak, and two, reply and comment saying streak's over. Just for her way to one-up me, I think. But yeah, 9 years, couch free. So
it's pretty good so far.
I don't think that's a nice feather in the cap. I think that's one of the highlights of my life so far. It's a sad life.
It's a pretty proud moment after 9 years, though.
It is. I mean, when this comes out, our second anniversary of marriage is on the 1st. So, and she works out of town, so she's gone 5 of the 7 days. So really, I only have 2 days of the week to really mess things up, and then she leaves again. So it's kind of nice.
Then she's got 5 days to cool down for whatever you did that pissed her off, and then it's like you're back to just barely below water.
It's like a reset every 2 days, and then she just I barely get my head to get a breath, and then I dig myself a bigger hole, and it. There have been some instances where I should have slept on the couch, but that's for another podcast on another day. Because I don't know how I survived and how we've made it this long, but hey, she's got.
Here we are.
She's much more forgiving than I think I would have been if I was in her shoes. So she's the real MVP.
The real MVP.
To quote Kevin Durant. Looking at, is anything else you want to mention on what's going on south of the border and around the world, or anything else we can do to help before we get on to more of what's happened in 2020?
No, I think that about hit it for me. The only thing I'll say, I don't know if either of you three will hear this all, but to my 3 American boys, Solon Ellis, Sean Michael Clancy, and Marcus Taylor Knighton, I hope you guys are staying safe and staying healthy down there. Marcus, I know you got a new baby that you just welcomed back in January. I hope the baby's doing okay. I hope the girlfriend's doing okay. Sean, Solon, I hope your moms are doing okay. Hope you guys are staying safe, and hopefully get to see you guys here sooner rather than later. Love you guys.
January babies are the best ones too. I'm just going to say it now. I'm one myself, so January babies got to stick together. We got on COVID a bit earlier, and kind of with just, for the lack of a better term, the shit show it's caused in the academic side of things, but also sports. And you mentioned now that you guys are getting in the gym next week, and kind of what kind of effect has COVID had on your team? Because, and I ask that because team chemistry is such a big deal, and usually by now teams have had summer camps, guys have been in the gym together. This year is far different. How has COVID kind of affected how you guys build a team chemistry over the summer?
Well, we've been fortunate enough, as I think I mentioned on the podcast that we recorded a couple months ago, when I mentioned that, we have the vast majority of our team in the city here. I think I counted it out. I think we have 2 guys, potentially 3 if everything works out, that will end up being a part of our roster this year that don't live in the Edmonton area, that haven't been able to come to any training camps, practices, workouts, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been lucky enough that we've had a good amount of time to bond with each other. And it's been a lot of our veterans too, like myself, Vishal, Dylan, Daryl Broderick, and Will Pittman, all coming back from last year. And then also the new guys that we've added, Luca Coruscant coming from Concordia, Yasser Abdullahi and Dante Dinter, who were both out of the league last year, but are both established players in the league. We're fortunate enough that all of those guys are in the city, and even some guys that people may not even know about that we'll get into later on in the show here that we have joining our program this year. And as well, having our young guys, Stian Gleddy that we mentioned as a recruit so far, a couple other guys that are going to be a part of the program that are fairly young, being able to have those guys here working with us over the summer and still getting acclimated with the team and getting to know each other and getting to do a good amount of work still together has been a huge benefit for us, and one that I don't think a lot of teams have had. Most teams, there's probably some teams out there that haven't done anything together this summer just based on circumstances, but we've been lucky with Slav having so many guys here in town and him being so committed to player development and improvement and getting better every day and having great team camaraderie and getting a great group of guys together, both from a playing perspective but also from personality perspectives, that people may say like I don't know, I say that we're already like a little family. I know that sounds kind of crazy. We haven't really had that much time together this summer, but we're a little family. We put together a team group chat back at the end of April, and we talk every single day to each other, and we're trying to build that chemistry and camaraderie up, because we're not going to have the time to be in the locker room together this year. We're not going to be allowed in the locker rooms at our school. We're just going to have getting into the gym for our 2 hours and getting out in the 5-10 minutes before and after practice that we're allowed to be in the school together. That's all we're going to get. We're not going to see each other around the school at all. We're not going to get individual workouts with coaches. We're not going to be able to really go out to the bars or do too many social things that we normally would in a regular season. So I think it's been a huge benefit for us to be able to do that much this season and to already see how our little family is coming together. I got a tattoo on my wrist that says family over everything. And I really believe that even though some of these guys have only met once or twice, some of them haven't met at all, this really feels like a little family to me. And it's going to be incredible to see how things kind of shape up from here.
It's kind of fitting, too, that the biggest word on the wall behind you is also family. Trying to see what else is on there. But, yeah, like you mentioned some of the guys.
That's my mom's up there. I'm in my mom's room right now. I don't even know what's up there.
Got heart, strength, faith, together. They all kind of fit. Yeah,
they do. They fit right into that little theme of things right now.
I wish I would have noticed before, because like right above your head at the top is listen. That would have fit perfect with what we have to do to be the change we want to see. But the group chat, I think, is a big one. And like you said, a lot of these guys haven't met before. A lot of the new guys coming in. Like you mentioned, Luca, Dante, Stian, Yasser. List goes on. The guys haven't met some guys in the team already, but now, since they've talked since April, whenever you guys get in the gym for the first time, really it's like you've basically know who they are already. It's just putting a face to a name that you have in a phone. And I think that's going to make the transition a lot easier for a lot of guys. And it also shows – it's also good, I guess, that Slav is recruited so much locally, because I don't think you can't predict a global pandemic. But having most of your team now in an area where you can work out or get together outside and do basketball workouts that way, it's kind of paid off a little bit. And I guess you can add that as another reason to recruit local in case there's a repeat pandemic in the future, which, knock on wood, there better not be. Like, one is enough for a lifetime. Thank you.
One is more than enough for a lifetime.
I think one is one too many in a lifetime.
Yep.
But now you may see this have an effect too on recruiting, where coaches look a little more local, because God only knows what's going to happen in the world these days. And if we get another situation like this, that's going to pay off. But it's good to hear that guys been staying in touch. And like you said, you're one of the veterans. So obviously, chemistry and getting the younger guys and the newer guys acclimated to the system is a big deal for you. And it's obviously been an adjustment to have to rely on group chats and whatever else you can do outside of having guys at summer camps or getting in a gym in June and just working out together. It's been a lot different. I think there's a lot of teams, like you said, that haven't done anything. This might put you guys much further ahead than other schools.
Definitely. And, one of the things, going back to the recruiting local, one of the things I remember, I sat on the panel for when we did the coaches interviews for when our position opened up after Mike took the job at McEwen. And I remember one of the biggest things that stood out to me when I was talking to some of the coaches, the one question that I always asked to them was, are you looking to build a program locally, or are you looking to just bring in the best guys you can for a program? And I remember 3 out of the 4 other coaches, they said, I'm trying to build a program and I'm going to bring in whoever it takes to win. Slav was the one guy who said, I want to build a program that has an emphasis on local players, as well as bringing in some internationals and some guys from other parts of the country in order to build the winning program. And that was one thing that really stood out to me, is that, obviously being a local homegrown individual from St. Albert, which is basically in Edmonton, that's important to me because I want to see more kids from St. Albert get an opportunity to come and play at the post-secondary level. We've had now, I want to say 7 years in a row, there's been someone from St. Albert that has gone to play collegiately, starting off in 2013, and now we got a kid coming into our team from St. Albert, from Paul Kane, that's going to be a part of our program. So that's really important to me, to see more kids from my hometown getting an opportunity to play, because there wasn't a whole bunch before 2013 that went to play. I think there was like 2 or 3 in the previous 5 years that had gone to play, and now I think we've sent over 10 in the last 6-7 years that have gone to play, and 7 years in a row we've had someone. So that's really important to me, to continue to see people from my hometown get the same opportunity that I did, whether it's going to a university, going to an ACAC school, heading down to play in the States at a JUCO, or going to play in D1 or D2 right away. I just want to see more opportunities for my hometown. And even kids in Edmonton, like, I want to see the schools in Edmonton have local talent on their team, so that people want to come out and watch, and they know some of the players that are playing, instead of looking at a roster and being like, well, who the hell are these guys? Like, they're not even from here. So it's going to be really nice to look at a roster sheet this year and see that, 14 or 15 guys, their listed hometown is either like Edmonton, Spruce Grove, Sherwood Park, Stony Plain, St. Albert. That's going to be a really, really great feeling to see.
You mentioned the point I was going to bring up too, is having so many players local is a big benefit to the school and the team as a whole, because then you're bringing in friends, family, whoever to watch games, to see. You're going to see the campus when you come to games, which is going to influence then the younger siblings or generation in that family. They're going to see so-and-so go to NAIT or go wherever, and then they're going to want to go there because their family went there. And they're going to have that tie with the school from watching games, whether it's for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. The effect that recruiting players from close to home or close to your home base can have is so much stronger than bringing in a guy from Toronto to Edmonton who may get homesick and leave after a year. Then you're going through recruiting all over again. Whereas even if you go to Calgary, you're still a heck of a lot closer than you are going to bring the best guy out of the GTA who may leave because he misses home or whatever reason, versus bringing in guys or girls that played high school ball in the area, familiar, have probably seen games as they've grown up, just as basketball players and fans, familiar with the school, familiar with the area. The benefits they severely outweigh the negatives in recruiting locally.
Definitely. And Well, you mentioned the family aspect there. Like, I've got the strongest tie that you possibly could at that school. My brother and I got to play a year together at that school. Like, there's no stronger connection and bond than that. You know, my dad played in the ACAC. My brother and I have both gotten to play games on the same court that he played at for a year. You know, that's huge. And again, it kind of ties in with the family thing, but also with, again, the staying local as far as recruiting goes. The hope here is that if we can keep enough guys as a part of the program from this year and move them into next year. You know, obviously there's no guarantees this year on whether we're even going to get to play or not, but fingers crossed, hopefully by the time season rolls around next year, which is about a year away from now, hopefully we've gotten this under control enough to the point where we can get back to a semi-normal season. You know, we have a huge advantage on people in the fact that we'll hopefully be able to return a large chunk of this team from this year. You know, we only have three guys actually, I should say, that would be going into their final year of eligibility next year. So that does us even more benefit moving forward. Like, we've still got a fairly young roster. Like, we got 6 first years that are coming in this year. We got guys like Luka Korosek and Dante Dinter. Those guys are only going into their 3rd year of eligibility. Like, they're going to be around for quite a while. So we're going to have, obviously, like every year, guys going out after every year because they're not allowed to play anymore for eligibility reasons, but we still are going to have a large chunk of the group from this year hopefully still left over by that point, and hopefully we can start to build into more of a program that carries on year after year instead of just having a revolving door at the start of training camp every year, and can actually start to get some camaraderie and hopefully build a program that becomes a national powerhouse again.
Having those guys come back to next year is going to be big, because even if this season does go off as you guys are able to play, chances are there's not going to be fans in attendance. So that family argument is kind of rendered useless for this year. But just, again, still having those guys in the fold for next year, and with eligibility still up in the air for this year. I think they've announced that there won't be any eligibility used this year if you guys play.
Yeah.
So even if the guys that were set to graduate come back for another year, the whole roster could essentially be the same. And one, strengthens that chemistry we touched on off the top. 2, family is going to come watch these games because, 1, they missed out this year. They're going to want to come and support more than ever. And 2, I think if this year has taught us anything, don't take anything for granted. So there's going to be people coming to games who may not have come to NAIT games before. There's going to be family that come out and support. It's just going to be a huge benefit to have most guys back. It's going to help team chemistry. It's going to help you guys grow to be in a national powerhouse again. But it's also going to have that trickle-down effect on the school as well, that I think recruiting locally, as we've just shown, there's a ton of pros to it. You may not have the talent that Toronto has, and that's okay because it's a much bigger pool to draw from. But you keep the best talent that you have in Alberta playing for your program, it's going to be huge.
Well, I'm looking at, obviously for myself, I'm going to be one of the main beneficiaries from this no eligibility deal, because this was set to be my last year here this year. And I was so excited when I heard that this year's not going to count to eligibility, knowing that, okay, I'm going to get at least 2 more years to play this game. Like, there's not going to be many people of all time that are going to get to play 6 years of collegiate basketball. And I'm going to form that group. And looking at our roster that we have this year, I'm so excited to play with this group of guys, and obviously this year is going to be different. Like I mentioned, the fact that we're not going to have nearly as much bonding time as a team off the court. So we're going to have to really take advantage of and be appreciative of the time that we're going to get in the gym together, because that's going to be all the time that we're going to get together for the first 4 months. Whatever time we get in the gym for that week, that's all we're basically going to get together for the week. And I think we're all going to really appreciate each other more and appreciate the game more for that reason, and I think it's going to really, again, help us gel into a really tight family. This year more than anything, family and togetherness is going to be a huge kind of message throughout the entire year, because this year is going to be tough. It's like nobody's experienced this before, and especially for some of the first years that are coming in, they're experiencing this. Like, first year of college is difficult enough anyways, not even taking into account being part of a collegiate team. Like, just being a student for the first time in college is very, very difficult. Add on top of that you're playing on a collegiate sports team, and now adding on top of that there's a global pandemic going on. Like, it's going to be like nothing anybody's ever seen before, and I can't even begin to imagine what those guys are going to go through. But it's also going to help that we have so many veterans on our team that have been around the league for so long. Guys like myself, Will Pittman, Daryl Broderick, Vishal Dillon, some of the guys that are coming in, like I mentioned, Luca, Dante, Yasser, guys that have been around the league and who have seen this at other schools, and being able to really have a great group of veterans that can help these young guys get acclimated and also help each other get acclimated. You know, we're welcoming so many new guys into the program, so I feel a large responsibility in order to be there for everybody this year and make sure that I make myself available to everybody who may need help, whether it be with school, whether it be with getting acclimated with the team, whether it be any kind of emotional or mental stress that they're going through at the time. I take a very large responsibility in that, and that's something that I'm looking forward to doing this year as a veteran, and starting to really give back and get the next generation of players that are going to be a part of our program and that will be our leaders at one point set to take on that role. And hopefully a situation like this that we're all going to go through together strengthens that even stronger, and it makes them even more suited to take on those roles moving forward.
It's I would hate to be a first-year student this year in a global pandemic, because one, like you said, college or university is such a big adjustment. To have to do it online, I don't know how that would go, especially if you're out of town. Like, if you move to go to school and you have to do it online, one, I would be pissed that I had to move, and two, like, that's a whole another adjustment in of itself. Trying to get yourself focused to do an online class. Like, it's one thing to go to class at 8 a.m., like to physically get up, go out into public. I would not have any motivation as a first year student to do an online class from wherever. I wouldn't do it. I would probably fail. Full admission.
I can say for an honest fact that I probably would fail that too. I remember how difficult it was for me my first year, and I struggled just through upgrading classes that were just high school level classes. I can't imagine some of these kids that are going to be going into some of these difficult programs like engineering or even business programs. Like, those first year classes are not easy in business at all.
No. And yeah, like, all the power to these first years, and anybody that's a student doing online this year. Like, the last 4 months of like online meetings have been tough.
Hell.
Let alone having to do a full course load online. You have to motivate yourself to get up and do it every day because there's no one else around you but you. I'm so glad that I am done school. I work at one. I don't have to attend a class. It's kind of nice. My office is quiet now. Nobody comes to bother me. It's good. Like, that's a small perk, but I miss having the people around at the same time. So I wanna have my cake and eat it too, I guess. Can't have it both ways.
That's right.
You mentioned some of the new guys already: Luca, Dante, Stian, Yasser. You've got Owen Lavity coming in, Ajo Simon, McQuesley Gibran. You got a 7-man incoming class in addition to the bulk that you guys have coming back this year. What are some of your expectations for the year, both for yourself being a veteran leader and as a group?
You know what? I honestly don't even really know what to expect this year. You know, taking a look at our roster from last year, obviously, you know, we made headlines with some of the players that we had in our roster, most notably Sean Michael Clancy, who put up probably one of, if not the greatest first seasons in the ACAC for a player's career.
Mm-hmm.
He won't be back a part of the program this year, unfortunately. Hugo Klusen, obviously, we know what he did this past year. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back before Christmas here for sure, and there's no guarantee that he can even be back at all this year, just based on the fact that he is from France and there are very heavy COVID-related travel restrictions right now.
Right.
Marcus Taylor-Knighton, again, didn't play the first semester, but came in at Christmas time and was a very solid force for us all year in the low post. And like I mentioned on the last podcast, ended up guarding the best player, Brock Dewsbury from Lethbridge, in that first round game that we upset them, and gave Brock one of his toughest nights of the entire year. Unfortunately, he won't be back, not only because of the COVID deal, but he also now, like I mentioned earlier, has a young baby at home that he has to go and do the most important job in life for, and that's be a father and be a good boyfriend to his girlfriend right now. And it's unfortunate right now to announce too, but Jamal Hines won't be back with us this year, unfortunately. We're not 100% sure what's happened with him, but he unfortunately won't be back with us this year. So that's our 4 leading scorers from last year gone right off the hop there. And then, very strong force off the bench, and Sheldon House, he won't be back with us, unfortunately, this year. So that's 5 out of our 7 guys that were our top minutes players in the playoffs last year gone right off the hop. So,
damn.
You look at our roster, and the only 2 guys that were really playing considerable minutes in the playoffs last year that are left are Daryl Broderick and Vishal Dillon. So we got a big bulk of new players coming into the program. Obviously, we've mentioned Yasser, Luca, Dante. We got young guys like Steen and Owen coming in. We mentioned a Joe. It doesn't sound like a Joe will be here before Christmas time as of right now. But then we even look at some of the other guys we've mentioned, like Wes. Wes was a part of our program last year, second semester. He practiced with us, and he was set up to potentially join the roster if we had any issues at Christmas time as far as either Sean, Marcus, or Hugo not being eligible, because Wes counts as an international. So he was lined up to be a part of our team, and he would have, if he could have played, he would have been in our rotation down the stretch in playoffs for sure. And he's set to take on a very large role for us this year, as well as those other 3 guys I mentioned, Luca, Dante, and Yasser. And, we look at a couple other names that haven't been announced publicly that are joining us. Noe Tachomo, that played up at Grand Prairie last year, who had a very, very strong rookie season up there and was in contention for the Rookie of the Year award, along with his teammate Manny that won that award. He hit this, like, the sky's the limit for him as far as what he can do in this league. Like, he has the potential to be a conference all-star if he wants to be. His ceiling is so high. And then another name that we just recently added to the team, Griffin Lorenz from Augustana. Given the whole deal that's happened with them as far as not being able to play this year, he decided that he wanted to play, and he's going to be joining our program now too. So that's another guy who made a big name for himself this past year in the league. He's probably one of, if not the fastest players in the ACAC, and he's capable of playing all 3 guard positions. So that's another quality established name coming to join the program. And, bringing back Will Pittman from last year. Unfortunately, we didn't have him down the stretch for second semester heading into the playoffs, but Will filled a lot of gaps for us first semester when we were still kind of figuring things out as a team. And, being a veteran of the league, having been out for a couple of years and coming in and putting up respectable numbers every night, both filling roles off the bench at the start of the season when we needed him to, and then jumping into the starting lineup whenever we needed him to. Like, he played a huge role for us last year. And, looking at some more of the other young guys that we had, Dan Gann, that was a part of our team this past year. He put in a lot of work this past year in order to just improve on the game. He started playing at a pretty late age into his later years of high school, and he hadn't had a lot of experience with organized basketball. He was kind of just playing on his own, and to see, where he was when he came into our first tryout at the start of May to where he was at the end of the year was like a completely different player there. And I feel like one more good year of development with him, he'll be ready to step into a rotation role, hopefully pretty soon with our team. And then we got other good young guys coming in. A guy named Keon Moore that anybody who knows young Edmonton basketball would have known. He was one of the top players of his class from 2018 of high school, playing at Ross Shepherd High School. And some things didn't work out quite perfectly for him. He originally committed to play for McEwen's. Things didn't quite work out there, and has gone and bounced around a little bit the last couple of years, trying to get his footing back in the game, and now he's going to come join us. So that's another good young prospect that's going to come in and compete with us. And then hopefully everything works out as far as this goes, but anybody who knows Edmonton basketball will probably recognize the name Chris Mooney. Hopefully we're able to get him back to come play with us this year. You know, Chris Mooney was one of my veterans my rookie year. He was supposed to be in his 5th year and ended up getting a concussion 7 games into the year and wasn't able to finish the season, but luckily got his year of eligibility back after that, and just hasn't worked out quite yet for him to come back and play. But hopefully now this year he's hoping that he can come back and play. So we got a lot of really good incoming bodies to the program here to not only add on to the 5 or 6 guys that we still have left from last year. So it's going to be so exciting to see how all these pieces fit together. You know, a lot of good established players in the league, guys that have made names for themselves. Obviously, the most notably of the new players, Luka, who just finished this past year as a member of the all-conference team, and Chris Mooney, who before he got injured during my first year in his 5th year, he was putting up numbers that were on an all-Canadian level at that point before he got hurt. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all these pieces and personalities kind of fit together here and what Slav's able to come up with as far as putting together a roster that's ready to go compete for a championship, hopefully sooner rather than later here.
I think the big thing, too, for you guys is obviously you mentioned losing like 5 of your top 7 minute eaters in the playoffs. A lot of the guys you add in have, like you said, are established. They've got post-secondary experience under their belts. So, yeah, you're losing guys that played a lot of minutes, but you're not relying on guys fresh out of high school to step into big roles right away. And that'll help their development because they're not basically thrown in the deep end and say, learn how to swim. And they also learn from guys who have this level of experience. And I think that's big. That's huge. And these guys know what it takes to win in the ACAC. They know what it takes to build a level of team chemistry and build an atmosphere around the program because they've had to do it before at their own schools. Obviously, NAIT's going to be a different system and whatever. But having these guys that 1, 2, 3, 6 or 7 guys that you just named off that have some sort of post-secondary experience, some of them having played against Slav last year, will understand what – obviously they had to scout you guys, so they understand a bit of what you guys do already. So that's going to help their transition into it. And adding more experience is never a bad thing. So I think that's going to make this transition a lot easier. Even though you haven't been able to get into a gym, they still know what it takes to succeed. It's going to make that transition when you guys do get into a gym and can be around everybody that much easier than it would be if you had a recruiting class of 10 first years and had to figure it out as they go.
Definitely. Well, you mentioned the experience factor. The first name out of that group that comes to mind for me with experience is Yasser. You know, Yasser has won a national championship before. He was a rookie on the NAIT team that won a national championship. Like, he knows, and he played at nationals. He wasn't just sitting on the bench. He played minutes at nationals. So he knows what it takes to achieve that level of success. And, you know, I was hoping to get a chance to play with Yasser when I came in as a rookie, and unfortunately things didn't quite work out for him at 8, and he ended up transferring to Grand Prairie. But he went and made a name for himself as a scorer up at Grand Prairie. He was the second leading scorer behind Kenny Johnson on that team.
Right.
I mean, obviously, unfortunately, that team didn't make it to playoffs either of the years that he was up there, but he established himself as a scorer in this league, and he's now coming back, and he's someone that we're going to look to fill a large role on this team, not only from a playing perspective, but as far as an experience perspective. Like, as far as I know, he's the only guy that's going to play in the ACAC this year that has a national championship ring. And even looking further up the line to the coaching staff, being able to add Samson Clear to our coaching staff this year, another guy who won a national championship and is an older guy. He's going to be turning 30 here soon. He's got a wife and a kid that's going to be turning 3.
Hold on. Slow down with the older guy. I'm 30. If he's turning 30, Hold on. Slow down. Okay, I just had to get that in there. That's a bit offensive.
No, I respect that, but no, like adding someone like him to the coaching staff who played 3 years at NAIT, who's the all-time leading rebounder at NAIT, who understands the high pressure situations like that. You know, he was on the floor at the end of the national championship game when they won. Like he knows what it takes to succeed in those moments, and being able to add someone as calm and collected as him and that has such a calm nature about him to a coaching staff that already includes 2 guys with national championship rings, like that's 4 national championship rings in the locker room for us between players and coaches. Like there's not too many teams that can say that they have that. So that's a lot of very, very valuable, not only basketball experience, but life experience as well. And again, with the way that things are this year, you can never have too much experience in your locker room, and you can never have too many guys who have been around and understand what it takes to find success at this level.
Yeah, like you said, this year especially, like experience. I'm a firm believer experience wins in college basketball, regardless of what level you play, but this year especially. And again, you mentioned Wes, who could have played last year, but was an international, had to sit out. Having him around the team last year he's basically another year of experience under his belt. Even though he didn't play a game, he was still in Slav's system for a year. He was still in practices. He still understood what was going on. Even though he won't show up on a box score, he still has a year under Slav under his belt. And that's big too, because it's another guy who understands the system. Yes, he's a new body in a game, but it's another body that can lead the newcomers and help them understand the system and kind of take some of that off guys like yourself and the coaching staff. And yeah, adding a guy like Sampson to the staff, like he was stellar in his career. To bring him back as a coach, I mean, like you can't beat it.
No, definitely not. And
even if he's an older guy now.
He always was an old guy. He was 20.
That's true.
He was 25 when he came to NAIT, so he always was an older guy on the team.
Yeah, that's true. That's valid. That makes sense.
But even like I mentioned, the life experience, you know, there's no greater life experience than being a father. You know, his son's going to be turning 3 here in November. So that's huge experience to add back. You know, he played his last year and a half at NAIT with a kid. Like I heard from him, there's nothing more difficult that he's done in his life than balance that for a year and a half, being a husband, being a father, going to school, working full time, playing collegiately. You know, him being able to balance that and manage all that, like there's no reason why any of us this year can't do anything after he was able to manage that. And I don't see any reason why we can't go out and, you know, even though a lot of the guys to the program are new and we don't necessarily have experience together, I think the fact of adding a collective amount of experience, like it's just going to be working out the kinks and figuring each other out at that point. Because we all know what the expectations are when you walk into practice on Monday. We all know what needs to be done on Friday and Saturday night in order to come out with 2 wins on the weekend. So it's just going to be the matter of putting all the pieces together and figuring out which ones go where. You know, obviously all the names that I've mentioned, we can't have everybody playing. So it's going to make for a really competitive training camp too. And, you know, we're going to have an extended training camp this year. It's not going to be a, you have to be perfect right away type of thing or else you're not playing. Guys are going to be able to kind of ease themselves into what we're doing here. And we can spend some time to really evaluate and see who plays well together, what lineups fit well together, and then be able to pick a 12 that we're going to roll with after Christmas time. And we can genuinely say, this is the 12 that gives us our best shot to win a championship and not have to make a split 5-week decision here.
Right. And just on Sampson too, for him to balance everything that he had going on and to be as successful as he was is a huge testament to his mental fortitude, his strength, his ability to just put his head down and work. Like that's huge. If there's some guys that would be in that situation would just probably crumble. Like they would just be overwhelmed. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for him to do. Like you said, it was the hardest thing he had to do for a year and a half. for him to come out as he did, you said, leading rebounder, like that's remarkable. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a
And
testament
to
to
have,
it's a
and to
testament
have
to who he is.
multiple all-conference selections to his
Right.
name as well. He was named all-conference his last 2 years in the league, and he averaged pretty much double-double both seasons. Like that's not an easy thing to do.
No, let alone having a wife and a kid and trying to go to school and being a quote unquote older guy. Like that's a lot to overcome. And you said 25 when he came to NAIT, so you're playing at 27, 28 against guys fresh out of high school who are a lot quicker probably than you are. But for him to do what he did is noteworthy, to say the very least.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, obviously coming in as an 18-year-old kid and being able to go up against him every day in practice, because I played the 5 right when I came in. I was going up against him every single day in practice, and just being able to learn from him, not only from a basketball perspective, but also just from a general life perspective, and to hear about some of the things that he's experienced that I didn't even know existed at 18 years old, and to really learn from him what I did over those 3 years. I don't feel I'd be anywhere near the leader and the person I am right now if I hadn't have spent those 3 years with him. He comes from such a different background than I do. He grew up on an island in the Bahamas. He's been to North Carolina and played in the States. And, I've just lived in St. Albert my entire life. So just to hear some of the life experiences that he's gone through and to see how it's kind of brought him to where he is today has done so much for me from a leadership perspective, from a general life perspective, and just shaping kind of who I've turned out to be here over the last 4 years at NAIT, and who I'm going to aim to finish off my career as hopefully at the end of next year. Hopefully I only have to play till the end of next year to finish off my career.
If I don't even know what the next month's going to have in store, let alone the next year. Yeah. Could you imagine they do another year of no eligibility, so you could play 7 years on a 5-year eligibility term? Like this is gonna get out of control at some point, I think. And I don't know. I don't looking at this year. I don't think there's going to be a nationals. I would bet against it. But even still, I think just the fact that you guys are able to get back into a gym shortly is a big step in the right direction. It's going to be interesting to see how schools handle everything. Knock on wood, there haven't been any reported outbreaks at schools yet. I know some, like we said off the top, out east and out west have been in gyms running summer camps, what have you. They've managed to stay safe. I know I just found out Mohawk College in Hamilton out here has had students on campus since July and no cases. So that's big. They've had over 1,000 students come through. So, I mean, we're going in the right direction. I think if sports come back, which I think they can safely, there's not going to be any fans, which I'm okay with. Just find a way to make it as safe as possible. You've seen it in the bubble. Obviously we can't have bubbles with schools because there's too many schools that are so far apart and academics are far more important. But there are ways I think that we can make this happen as safe as possible. I just hope that conferences don't get too scared and just say we're not playing, because that's gonna feel for the athletes the most, because there's ways that this can happen. There are ways that this can safely go about, and I just hope. That's all I can do right now. That's all I've done all 2020 is hope.
That's all you can do at this point.
Hasn't got us very far yet, but going to continue riding it out to 2021 and hope that January is the start of something new, because we need some sort of positivity right now.
Agreed.
Is anything else on the team that we missed that you wanted to bring to light before we wrap things up. I think we hit every word on the wall back there too. I would not be shocked if we at least mentioned every single word on the wall above your head in this episode at least once.
I feel like we probably have. I take a little look up there. I think we've gotten most of it. Yeah.
Because I even threw in marriage, so I mean that's right below family. So the fact that that was even worked in, I think I think we did okay.
Yeah, we did pretty good. No, I think we've hit on everything. You know, obviously we did a long list of the players. There's a long list of new bodies coming in. A lot of names that probably people have forgotten about. You know, guys like Yasser, Dante, Chris Mooney. People have probably forgotten about these guys and forgot that they even exist. And all three of those guys are established players in the league. You know, Dante came in and he shot 47% as a second year up at Keano and was playing 25 minutes a game as a rookie up at Keano on a team that went to the playoffs. Like that's not something easy to do, and it's not something that just happens to anybody. And, you know, I've learned so much from him since he came in about just, you know, being a gym rat and just wanting to work all the time. You know, I've played with some huge gym rats over my career. The two I can think of most notably are probably the two most accomplished players I played with, in Jackson Jacob and Sean Michael Clancy. And I put Dante right up there in that group as far as work ethic and the amount of work that he puts in on his game. You know, obviously you had him on the podcast and I listened to that, and we've heard about his journey and how he's always just trying to get a little bit better at something every day. So I'm really excited to get him in the gym here and start actually working from a team collective and just kind of see what he's capable of bringing to this group in that regard. And then, you know, someone like Luka coming in who was a conference all-star this past year, seeing him as a true point guard. You know, we haven't really had a true point guard on our team that I think is capable of leading us at that level in a while. You know, we've had some very quality players like Wyatt Beaver and Solon Ellis that have played that position. And, you know, last year we had Sean playing that position for most of the year. But I think having someone like Luka who comes from the European background and really understands the fundamentals of playing the point guard position, I think is going to be a huge benefit for us, because he has every aspect that you look for in a point guard. And then, you know, guys that I mentioned like Noe and Griffin that were part of other programs this past year and made names for themselves for different reasons. You know, Noe, like I said, I think the ceiling is the limit for him as far as what he can go ahead and accomplish. I think he has so much potential to be one of the best, if not the best, two-way players in the league by the time he gets a little bit later in his career. And the size that he brings at that position, you know, he's not the tallest, but he's a very, very thick guy, and he can play and guard probably four positions he can guard, and probably three of them he can play. Then again, someone like Griffin, who things haven't worked out for him, unfortunately, at a couple other schools. If Augustana was playing this year, I know for a fact he would still be there, and we'd be having a different conversation. But things not quite working out there, and now coming to us and going into his third year of eligibility, and the versatility that he brings, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball, is positions he can play, skills he brings, positions that he can defend. And then again, we mentioned like Wes, having someone as long and as athletic as him at such a young age, as far as eligibility goes. Obviously, he's not at a rookie age. He's not 18 years old, but at an eligibility age of only being a first year, and having him as a building block for the next, hopefully, we see him in the program for 5 years. And then, again, the veterans that we bring back from last year, and myself, Daryl Broderick, Vishal Dillon, Will Pittman, just, you know, having guys that were part of the program last year and kind of understand what we're trying to do right away here, and who have played for, like Daryl, Vishal, and Will have all played for multiple schools over their time, so they understand dealing with adversity and adjusting to different situations. And then myself, I guess I'm kind of now the grandpa of the program heading into my 5th year. I'm going to be the only guy who's been with the program for what will be all 5 years. By the time they're done, I'm just really excited to see how everything's going to shape up this year, and kind of see how everything gels together and what we're capable of as a team here. You know, I got to give huge props to Slav for what he put together. I think this could be one of, if not the greatest recruiting classes in ACAC history as far as what talent goes, and as far as the potential that we have with this group. So I gotta tip my hat to him and give him a big time shout out on that. I'm really, really excited to see what we're able to do this year.
And you're now, quote unquote, the old guy of the team. Funny how it comes full circle. And if this eligibility thing keeps extending, you might be a Sam Sinclair old guy before the time's out. So careful
I hope
how.
I'm not. I hope I'm not still 28 and playing in the league, because that means that the world is just going to be shit forever.
Yeah, like please just let this year be the only year, because if it no eligibility for the next who knows how many years, that means we're nowhere closer to where we need to be. So let's hope you only got 2 more years left, and then that's it. And that means we're kind of on the up and up as a society, and that's what we want.
Got to be able to get into the real world and start making a real contribution at some point. I can't just keep playing basketball forever and taking open studies to keep playing basketball.
Sounds like Matt Leinart, who took ballroom dancing to play his 5th year at USC. You got it. If they're going to let you play, you can take whatever you want. Do it.
I actually looked at a beekeeping course potentially that I thought would be a decent one to go with. I could add that onto the list of stereotypes for men's basketball players. Add that on to the basket weaving and the yoga classes.
Beekeeping. Roll up to practice in your bee suit with a mask on. Hey, that'd be COVID friendly though, because it's just
it actually is a real program at our school, and
really?
Multiple people have said as a joke, like, "Oh, this would be a perfect athlete program."
Huh. Add that to the list of programs I never knew existed. Never thought there would be anything remotely close to
right?
it. Learn something new every day. NAIT has a beekeeping course.
That's right.
There we go. That's my one.
Any of you people listening out there hoping to be a beekeeper at some point in life, NAIT's the place to come.
And if you play basketball, it's a twofer. Sign up.
That's right.
Go out, send Slav a message, see if you get recruited. Be the first men's basketball player at NAIT to be a beekeeper or a graduate of the beekeeping program, whatever it's called. I'll have to look that up. Correct myself for next time. But I want to thank you for doing this again, Keelan. It was a ton of fun. And anytime, again, you want to do this, more than happy to make it happen. It's twice in 2 months, so hopefully people don't get sick of you or me. But and hopefully we keep going strong with no complaints. But really appreciate you doing this. Anytime you want to jump on, we can make it happen again.
Awesome. Appreciate you again having me. It was awesome to take some time to catch up with you again and discuss what's going on with us here. And yeah, maybe we'll have this conversation again here once we get closer to the start of the season and we can see where we're at from there.
I'm craving any sort of resemblance of the season. So as soon as you guys get in the gym, we'll have to make that happen for sure.
That's right.